Geoffrey Ashe thinks that a lot of the characters in the account of King Arthur's European campaign can be explained if you understand the story to have come from Riothamus's invasion. Like, for example, the Pope. He thinks that that can be understood as being Pope Simplicius, which I discussed in my previous video. Another example of this is the Emperor Lucius in the story. He is the person who fights Arthur at Siccia. He leads the Romans and the other nations that fight against Arthur. According to Geoffrey Ashe, this ties in with the Emperor Lucius. He was the emperor from 473 to 474, which is several years after Riothamus had his fight against Uruk. So this obviously doesn't work in practice, but Geoffrey Ashe has pointed out that there is a chronicle called the Chronicle of Sigebert Gemblow. I'm not sure how you're meant to pronounce that. And that was written in the previous century to when Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote. But this chronicle does not call him Lucius, it calls him Lucius, which is not exactly the same, but it's closer to Lucius in the story. Also, it doesn't put his reign as being when it actually was, in 473 to 474, rather it puts it in 469 to 470, which is when Riothamus came to Gaul. So that seems to work, doesn't it? So according to Geoffrey Ashe, the source of the Lucius character in the story probably comes from this chronicle, or at least it has a related source. So, you know, that seems to make sense. It ties in. The name is pretty similar. The reign, the dates of the reign works according to this chronicle. However, it doesn't work for several reasons. One, it is often claimed that Lucius is referred to as a procurator in the account. However, there are some passages which make him the emperor. However, this is not true. There are in fact no passages at all in the entire history of the Kings of Britain, or even the Life of Merlin, which Geoffrey of Monmouth also wrote, which make Lucius the emperor. There are none. There are several which imply, you could perhaps take it to imply that he was the emperor. For example, after Lucius sends his letter to Arthur, and Arthur responds, he responds by means of the Roman ambassadors to send Arthur's message to the emperors, plural. So not just Emperor Leo, who is mentioned in the account, but there's at least one other emperor. Apparently some people feel that this implies that Lucius is that other emperor, but there's no reason to think that. He is called a procurator in the story, and he is shown to be subject to the Senate. So if Geoffrey of Monmouth had got his character of Lucius from the Chronicle of Sigebert, then he would have called him emperor, because he's called emperor in there, and I think anyone who's ever considered Geoffrey of Monmouth's work would not say that Geoffrey of Monmouth would try to downscale the things that happen. He exaggerates a lot of the time. So, you know, he likes to big up things a lot. So the idea that he would have lowered the rank of Lucius intentionally, at least, it just doesn't make sense. There's no reason why he would have done that. He consistently calls him procurator and never makes him the emperor. Additionally, the second reason why this theory doesn't work is because of the date. Even though, yes, the chronicle does put Lucius in the same time when Riothamus came over to Gaul, Geoffrey of Monmouth does not place the events in the 400s. He clearly places it in the 500s. He says that Arthur gave up the rulership to Constantine after the Battle of Camlan in 542, and that takes place just after Arthur comes back from his fight against the Romans. So Geoffrey of Monmouth thought that it took place then, even if, as Geoffrey Ashe argues, the date was wrong. Even if that's the case, Geoffrey of Monmouth had this date of 542, so he would not have looked in the 5th century history in this chronicle for information to pluck out for his story. It just wouldn't make any sense either. Additionally, another reason why this theory doesn't work is because Riothamus never fought against Lucius. In real life, he fought against Euric of the Visigoths, not Lucius of the Romans. And you could say that maybe that's just an inaccuracy on Geoffrey's part, but as I mentioned in my first video, using the Roman era of the history of the kings of Britain as the standard of accuracy, there is no precedent for Geoffrey of Monmouth replacing one historical figure, Euric, with another historical figure, Lucius. And maybe he has some inaccuracies as to what historical figures did, but he doesn't switch them round. So there's no precedent, there's no reason to believe that Geoffrey of Monmouth would have changed Euric for Lucius, as well as all the other issues like the date and the rank. So those are my thoughts on that particular aspect of Geoffrey Ashe's theory about Riothamus, and I hope you enjoyed that.